Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Expression Blend 2 Tips and Tricks. Thanks for letting us come here and entertain you. And it's kind of interesting because we're near Halloween. We could have said trick or treat or something, but we didn't, so that's all right. We've got a little agenda. First thing I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about why we should care about user experience. And then we're gonna get into really doing some interesting tips and tricks. First one we're going to do is large application design. Second is about debugging things on the design surface inside Blend. Third, we're going to talk about design applications with designability built in. We're going to talk a little bit about embedding fonts. If we still have time, we're going to actually show a tool we often use in testing. And then we're going to end up with a bunch of Q&A. And hopefully we'll have enough time for that. The first thing, and before I actually answer this question, I want to get a little idea of who is in the audience. So if you've ever heard of Blend before, could you raise your hand? That's good to know. Okay. The second question I've got is, how many of you are developers versus designers? Anybody designers? Is somebody who would consider themselves to be both? I love that. Okay, good. Nice to know. One of the things that going back, I think it's a little bit illustrative to go back to why we did Expression Blend in the first place. The whole purpose really had to do with providing tools for designers that work with developers, and it kind of came to this point where, I think in the industry, we can no longer assume that that effective user experience isn't an option. It's something that's required. When your users, if you're in IT or whatever, if you're building products, regardless, if your users are using major commercial websites or experiences all day long, and they use this stuff, and they go to work and they use stuff that just doesn't work and feel good, or just training budgets, et cetera, it's a real problem. I think the other thing that's super important is if you're going to be using designers and developers to build better software, you better have a good workflow. And so we certainly, we're here to help give our thoughts on how to best solve that problem. And I think the third and really critically important point is this is now and in the future. Expression tools have shipped on a yearly cycle the last 2 years. We're going to continue on a yearly cycle. We're going to be bringing substantial innovation. And one of the things that's also really important as we think about process change, and this is what we're really talking about, is when you're engaging designers and developers using our tools, you're asking people to change the way they think, the way they work. And having tools that support that is critical. And that's what this is about. So has anybody seen the egg analogy? Not too many. This is good. So think about, this is basically an illustration of the design-developer collaboration situation. The way it is, for the most part, for most of you, I suspect. So let's say that we'd like to build this application. We'll call it an egg for now. It's kind of an interesting object. You get it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a sphere. It's gorgeous. It's also fragile. And we'll start this with user-centered design principles up front. That is, a designer and developers work together to say, what's the model look like? What should we be doing? And so you've got this egg. And the first thing a designer might do is try to figure out how do I draw this? How do I form this? Might actually deliver to you as a developer perhaps comps. It should look this way. It really should work this way. You may be using the tools you use, Photoshop, et cetera. Perhaps you've used Expression Design. I know this guy does. And if you've really got designers that are really trying to get things, they might have even developed a little prototype. Maybe it's in HTML, maybe it's in something else. That's awesome. Eventually it gets into production, and you get that. And that's it. I mean, this really happens, and you probably see this all the time. And it's a real problem. And one of the things that we really built Expression Blend for was so that you, as a developer, could use Visual Studio, you could, as a designer, could use expression blend, expression design, expression tools in general. Work together using the same file formats, the same project file format even. Use this intermediary format called XAML to describe basically the view of the application and let the developers work on the engine inside. And that's really what Blend's all about. So I think it's safe to say that sort of prior to Blend, and even today, collaborating between designers and developers is a problem. And it's a problem, and I think process change will do it. Also, tools changing will help that as well. And I think the other sort of aspect that I'd like to drive is that better user experience impacts everybody. It's a big deal. It makes whether you're doing work for commercial sort of reasons or even doing sort of IT things, first impressions count. It's just a good thing to do. So I think it's safe to say that collaboration between designers and developers is expected all the time. It's got to be there. And that's one of the reasons that I suspect you're here. Those of you who are using Blend, you probably have at least some idea of that. You came to see some tips and tricks. So I want to introduce Pete Blois. By the way, I'm Doug Olson, if you didn't figure that out already. Kind of like I'm the pen to his teller a little bit. So anyways, we're going to start off with, let's take a look at an interesting use of, you're beautiful. So we're going to start with this large application that you, I suspect, are relatively familiar with. Pete, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, interactive, name of the solution. This comes from its old name, Interactive Designer. You may have heard of it under its new name is Blend, Expression Blend 2. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually opening up Blend 2 Service Pack 1, the source code, inside of Blend 2 Service Pack 1, just to show you an example of a large WPF application. It's a handy one that we had around. Blend 2 Service Pack 1, this is, we shipped this about 2 weeks ago,
yep.
I think. So it is available for trial on the website or purchase on the website as well. If you tried the older versions of Blend 2 Service Pack 1 with this, or Blend 2, if you had the trial of that, with the Service Pack, we extended the trial period, so give it a try if you haven't.
So a fun fact to know and tell is Blend is, of course, built inside WPF, and at times has been edited by Blend to create Blend, which is kind of a wacky thing to do.
Yeah, it's really cool. We've talked about this before, but we've never, I don't think that we've actually demoed it before. So this is the entire source code for Blend 2 that I have open, and I'm just going to go to the welcome screen first. This is a nice dialogue that we can actually, I don't know if you want to talk about.
Yeah, show the welcome
real
screen. That's it. You'll see there's 3 tabs. The projects, of course, is your most recent projects. Help is could you open that up again?
Or this is actually it running.
Oh, there it is. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, you can see
right
it.
in there.
Yeah, we can also look at the one while we're designing.
And then samples, we load with a bunch of interesting content each time we do a release. And so how do we actually build this?
Yeah, this is, for this control right here, this is just a restyled tab control. We use control templates. Basically, we won't go into too much explanation on it. There is a session on Thursday on Silverlight, but Silverlight WPF control templates are identical. But this defines the look of the control. So if I actually want to look at how each one of these little control templates here, basically along the top, is defined, I just edit the template of it, and then I can actually drill into the parts and see how it's made. So the designer can go through, they can edit the gradients, they can edit the look of all of these things. So I can make pretty simple changes in here. If I just wanted to make the text go to the left, you'll actually see that this control template is reused across all of the other tabs. And so it modifies all 3 of them at the same time. I'll just undo that and redo it again so you can see that. There's also like selection, so you want to show that the tab is selected inside of Blend. So we'll look at the selected state here is selected and see what goes on. The text here got a little bit darker inside of that project. So it went from gray to dark. There's a lot of capability.
Make it red.
Make it red,
Make it
bright
really
red.
ugly, so we can see that.
Let's see. Oh, sorry. I need to actually modify this guy, the foreground. So bright red. I don't know, yeah, maybe not the best for our design, but actually it's pretty noticeable. So if I go back out, I'm going to use the breadcrumb bar. This is for navigation, so I can jump in and out of the control template here with the breadcrumb. Jump out, and then I'll see what the other tabs look like with these changes that I just made. So you can actually see simple things, just changing that color. This is the basic workflow that we see inside of Blend quite a bit. This is a sort of exemplary dialogue here.
I think one of the things if you're using Blend for large applications, you probably end up using resources, and we obviously use tons of resources.
Yep. So one of the other dialogues here, or one of the other panes that we use a lot more inside of our UI, I'm just going to go try and find a good one. It's a pretty big project. It's the entire Blend, I think it's 300,000 lines of C#, and it's about 80,000 lines of XAML. So there's a lot of stuff in here. I'll actually just go through a nice simple one, so just the results pane. So you actually see this is the same pane as right down here. So this results area, we can just show basically how it's composed, just the output and errors. You'll see that the sizes are actually different. One of the features of actually using WPF to render this is that the user interface can be scaled very easily. It's all vector art, so I can scale in a lot or I can scale down. The design surface is not scaled, so let me actually make that a decent one. And there's also, we also have the expression dark and expression light themes, so you can change the entire look. I'll actually show you how this is done inside of the Blend application, how the dark and light themes are created. So for resources, we can go and see what this application is used. If you aren't familiar with WPF resources or Silverlight resources, basically they are items that can be reused within the application. We make very, very heavy use of application level resources within Blend itself, and this is what our developers, all of our customers use as well. So basically we have, within the application, we have resource dictionaries, and this is a collection of resources that define many things such as colors, looks of controls, a lot of stuff. So I'm just going to open up the Blend level, the Blend dictionaries here. And we'll see expression dark, so this is the look right here that we're looking at. And if I actually want to see what makes up the expression dark theme, it's basically just all of these resource entries. So we have entries, we have colors and brushes for every single color that we use within the UI. If I go down, there's some of the more common ones, or resource link. So anywhere that we want to put a color up that actually shows like this is a resource, then we'll use this one resource brush. This allows the designer to actually modify just one place and for it to affect everywhere.
What it also does is allows the designer to build a style guide that says, hey, if you're doing this kind of a new dialogue, use these things that exist already. And it's a really easy way to do it.
Right. There's also margins in here as well, and our text sizes are in this one.
Like you see the Sego UI font in there as well.
That's actually, so I'll show you that. So this is basically all of our colors. So when we change the themes, I can show you, this is the expression dark look. And if we wanted to actually say what the expression light looks, I'll go into the expression light theme. And that's all, this is all the light colors here. So some of the same entries, but some of the different ones, or a couple different ones. Basically what we do is we just swap out the resource dictionary on the application level. So we just remove all the expression dark resources and put in all the expression light resources. We use dynamic resources through, it's basically the bindings for how you do resource lookups throughout the application. So we use dynamic ones, which will update. If there's people who have been doing a lot of WPF applications, we get a lot of questions about performance of dynamic resources versus static resources. Static resources don't update over time, so they're supposed to be a little bit more performant. We have not seen too much performance difference between the two. So we're cool with...
Yeah, we're using tons and tons of resources, and we've not found that to be a performance
everywhere.
At all.
Yeah, yep. So it gives us the functionality that we need. The other part of this, so we have all of our sort of like colors here. But for the styles, this is actually, I'll go to the styles core. This is where we define the look of all of the controls. And this is the core of a lot of our users' projects as well. This is where a lot of people work. Basically, you can see all of the controls used within Blend are defined inside of this application, or defined inside of this resource dictionary. So just one simple example is the expression expander. It'll take me a moment to open it up. And so this is, you'll see it in objects in timeline, just the tops of all these. And we can actually show there's a couple places in the UI where when it's aligned to the left, some stuff like that. So the designer can go through the application and they can actually modify this resource. The interesting thing about this resource dictionary and actually the assembly that it's in for Blend is that it's used across a couple other expression applications. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of interesting because the designer can do one bad check-in and break about 3 applications at once. Add some fun to the
One thing that's interesting is if you look at the Expression Studio, certainly Expression Blend is a big part of that. Expression Design, we were talking with somebody here just before we just got started. Expression Design is actually an MSC application that we wrap WPF around, and it uses this whole framework that we're showing you here to do that. We also have new applications like Expression Encoder, completely new, built straight on the same sort of core framework we're using. So it's a good way to do big and large applications that actually works for us. Yep. Very much so.
Yeah, one interesting note actually, like really quick on that, is that we do, it's the framework actually assembly right here that we use across basically all of the projects. So a lot of people try to share the styles basically as just resources. We just found that for our controls, we need to do a lot of subclassing. So basically, it's the styles and the assembly that we share between all the projects.
Awesome. Hey, that brings up to my mind a question. I don't know how many of you are focused on WPF and how many of you are focused on Silverlight. I'm just curious, how many are primarily doing WPF-based things? Okay, and how many are primarily focusing on Silverlight 2 in particular? Great, so about half and half. And in the future, are folks who are doing WPF planning to continue doing WPF? Or are you transitioning to Silverlight? Both. All right, awesome. That's
same code.
That's the whole idea, isn't it? Awesome, thanks.
Yep.
So speaking of that.
Speaking of that, so we'll just go into the next thing. Is actually, so we've shown you what happens, what you can actually get, like great experience. Sometimes that great experience isn't always there.
So often you have a developer who's using perhaps Visual Studio and creating an application, and a designer goes and opens it up, and something happens that you don't really expect. And you typically, when this happens, at least inside of Microsoft, Pete gets a call. He says, "What the heck do I do? What's happened here? Go ahead and show me."
Yeah, so you have like a team of developers, and they're working on some stuff. This is just a project that I did on the side, but you have a team of developers. They're working on some stuff, prototyping stuff. It works all great, and they're like, "Hey, that's just like a little virtual Earth."
Make it look better.
Make it look better. It's like, okay, the prototype, like we've proven that it works. Now we got to do this exec review. We got it in like a month. And we got to make it look good. So bring in a designer, and the designer opens it up in Blend. They get started, and they open it up on the design surface, and what do they see? And it's like, error on the design surface.
So what does that mean? What does that mean, Pete?
Yeah, something went wrong. We tried to give some error handling there.
We will give out his phone number, by the way, at the end of this. And,
what I'm trying to do,
call him,
what I'm trying to do here is just help yourself, so I don't get too many like late night phone calls. Like, what the heck? This is broken. Unfortunately, the code is actually running in the design surface, and this isn't part of everybody's everyday test matrix. Mm-hmm. So since it is under different conditions, different things can go wrong. This is just a simple example of it. So how do you help yourself when this does go wrong? Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this project in Visual Studio. So we have pretty seamless workflow between Visual Studio and Expression Blend. These are the same solution files. These are the same project files between the two products. You can have them open at the same time, and you can be editing them together. So what I'm going to do is, since this is actually managed code, it's running Silverlight in the design surface, I'm going to debug the error that it's occurring inside of Blend using Visual Studio.
That's right. This is true for WPF and for Silverlight. So
yep.
WPF actually runs WPF in the design surface. Silverlight, the same thing.
Yep. So I'm just going to debug, attach to process. So I'm going to attach it to Blend. Make sure that it's managed code up here. And then the other thing that I always do, I always debug with exceptions on. I don't know if you're doing too much stuff, especially for Silverlight. It seems like I catch a lot of stuff just with exceptions always on. So that's basically best practice. We do that for Blend as well. We try to make it run clean from exceptions. So I'm just going to close this and reopen it again. Yep. And what do we have here? So basically what's happening is that there's some mouse wheel code to actually zoom in and zoom out the screen. And that mouse wheel code relies on basically DOM interop. So it's a feature of Silverlight 2 where you're allowed to hook out, call out to the web page. In this case, we aren't actually running in a web page. There's no web page when you're on the Blend design surface. So this code is just throwing an error, and it's just saying HTML page is not enabled. That's no good. So there's easy checks. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to see if I'm actually allowed to do that. Save that, and I'll just rebuild really quick, see it update. Oh.
What did it do?
Oh. I'm not sure.
Interesting.
Yep. Okay. On to the next one.
This actually worked every other time we've tried this?
Yep. I'm curious about that, but I'll actually move on.
I suppose. We'll have to come back to that one.
Yeah, we'll come back to that one if we have a moment at the end. It was working. Yep.
All right. So you know, another best practice is when you're creating an application, is you want to build it with designability in mind. You know, certainly just by simply using the XAML sort of pattern, you get to some degree some of that. But building it in an interesting way lets somebody take a project. You want to expose certain things and make this interesting. And Pete actually started this interesting application. Want to talk about it?
Yeah. So I was just playing around. I was looking for a fun application just to test some random stuff with. So I decided to do a Twitter application. I've had it sort of laying around for a while. It's a pretty simple application.
So Twitter, you mean actually
Twitter.
Like, you know, the real Twitter?
Yeah, the Twitter service. You know, just something that would connect up to the Twitter service.
Is anybody else following PDC 2008 on their Twitter?
Yeah, there's lots of...
Couple people? Not too many.
Some hands. Okay.
Get a different response when we're at Mix, so I'm just curious.
Yeah. So I wanted an application that would show like a good little login flow and then actually connects up to web services. You have to proxy through web services to actually get to Twitter. So I have like a web service in here. Pretty cool stuff. Some of the things that I did, I tried to focus on some nice like usability of the application.
Could you make this design surface a little bit bigger so in the back you can actually see it?
Oh yeah. So I can actually scroll in like that, or I can use the mouse wheel. Yep. Or a fun little feature. I really like this one. Control 0. So if I'm editing this control, then I can just do Control 0, and it will actually zoom right into that thing that I'm editing, make it fill up the screen. So when you're actually logging in, I wanted to show like a little bit of progress, and so I did some animations. Just open up the timeline here to actually show. These are states. Visual State Manager. This is a feature of Silverlight 2.
And it's a new feature in Expression Blend 2 SP1. So if you haven't already downloaded it, it's for free, and you should do that. We also, this is actually enabled right this very second in Silverlight, and later today,
Or tomorrow, was it?
Maybe it's tomorrow, sometime soon.
Sometime.
WPF is actually going to give you a toolkit that actually enables this very same capability using WPF.
Yeah, so the WPF toolkit is getting updated to include Visual State Manager, and there's a super secret registry key that you set, and then Expression Blend 2 SP1 will light up with projects with that, so you can actually do Visual State Manager editing there as well. So Visual State Manager, we often talk about it for control template editing for the different states of a control, such as mouse over of a button or something like that, the focus. What I used it for here was actually the states of the application. So I just want to say, like, when you're logging in, I just want the dialogue to fade out some to show, like, give a little bit of user feedback that something is going on. And when you actually get logged in, what happens is So a little transition there between the two, and then you actually have the data show up.
So for folks who are into design methodologies and what often gets used is these things called, I call them transient animation. And it's little tiny minimalistic things that just make the user experience better.
Yep.
And you of course, being who you are, you're actually taking advantage of these little things. And using VSM to enable that is a fantastic way to do it.
Yeah, normally I just do this through code. Like I would just like delete the old element, delete the login screen, new up the contents of this, and then just plop it in. And it'd be a pretty harsh transition. So that's possible, that works, but I really wanted to do something different here. Also note, like we can see what's actually being animated. So on here, I'm just animating the opacity, but I also did the visibility. So I took it from visibility collapsed to visible. That's a little bit for performance, because basically when the dialogue is collapsed, then it's much more performant. It's sort of out of the way at that point.
Maybe we should just run this, and you'll see he didn't do this in a separate window. He just did this using states.
Yep. So I was trying to emulate more, or I was trying to give it very much a desktop application feel. So you all know my Twitter thing. Let's see if it logs in. Twitter is always down, or their service seems like extremely flaky. So, yep, it's up. So,
this is live.
Yep, if there's people actually, anybody on my following list updates,
I think you should twit the world and let us know that you're doing this right now. Could you do that?
What's that?
Give a tweet. Yeah, Twitter.
Hey,
so anybody following PDC 2008 will get that? Is that right?
Or no,
or
I didn't
you.
add the tag in there.
Yeah. Okay, well, whatever.
So.
If you're following Pete, you'll know this now.
Yep.
Anyways, so that was interesting because that's a cool app, and you could.
I was proud of it.
Yeah, it's really
I
neat.
put some good time into it. I think the basic of the app took about a weekend. Was how long I did it. But then I keep on updating it in my spare time and stuff.
We have this interesting fellow who actually does a lot of the content. And I don't know if you've used the sample content in Blend. There's some pretty interesting work in there. And we've got this great guy he stands somewhere in between a designer and a developer. He kind of does it all. And he's amazing. His name is Celso Gomez. You can actually go to his blog. It's called Tutorial...
Nibbles Tutorials.
I'm sorry, thank you. NibblesTutorials.net. And we'll have a reference to it later on.
Yep.
But interesting fellow. And he took a look at this thing. He said, this is cool. And what do you do?
Yeah, he was just like, hey, Pete, kind of play around with it because he knew that I was like getting ready for PDC, and he was like, what can I do with it? Should I just run it?
Yeah, just run it. Now, he didn't really change any of the engine.
No, he just went to town on the UI of it. So that login screen, he decided to give it the bird theme because Twitter, they're sort of like tweets, so a much more of a bird theme. And this was pretty much a day. Now he's a pretty productive guy, but it was still pretty cool that he did it within a day.
See if he can still type with his thing going up and down.
Yep. You get some animations there. And log in. So this bird actually becomes like the submit button, and you can see, yep, it says I'm actually giving my talk. Sweet. I have some selection animations as well. Pretty cool. So we can look at basically the application, and he just went like where I had this really basic. Let's see, when you actually log in, I had this just simple transition. I wasn't thinking about doing anything crazy at all. But I built in basically the extensibility, the points, for him to take advantage of without even thinking about it.
Yeah.
And then he just, made it do something that I didn't.
The thing I like the most is when you hit an error. What happens in that situation?
The error. So I'll actually go.
Look at the bird himself.
The bird.
Cool. Yeah.
Yep. So the bird has a couple states too, and we can see when it complains, then it goes dead.
It's a sad story, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
But the point of all this, again, you could call that silly, you could call that useful, whatever, is you had somebody who took this core engine. Maybe he knows enough about it to be dangerous, but not enough to change it. But he's able to make this really, really interesting. Now, I mean, you can debate whether it was more usable or not, but certainly more interesting for sure.
Very often we talk about designer-developer workflows starting at comps from Photoshop and then the developer actually implementing it. For this one, it was essentially the other way around, in that I had a pretty functional application, and the designer came in and completely revamped it, gave it back to me, and when he gave it back to me, that was still a functioning application. I didn't have to do anything to it to take it up here and show it to you.
It's awesome.
Yep.
So embedding fonts, something that you know, if you're doing WPF applications, you probably don't think too much about it. But certainly when you get off to the web, you think about that a lot because, again, now you're developing something that's going to land on somebody's web browser. You have no idea what fonts are installed. And if you're a designer and you care about typography, this is something that you're going to care about, right? And so we just wanted to give you a little bit of this. It's actually a feature that came in Blend that was recently enabled for Silverlight. And we're just going to show you just a little bit about how to use this feature in a way that's most effective.
Yep. So I'll start out here, just add a text block, some text. That's not
kind of small.
That's not too seeable, all you guys. Let's see.
Oh,
yep. Pretty good. Now we want to give it a better font.
Yeah.
Have any suggestions?
You know, I like that Bauhaus one.
Bauhaus.
German sort of style there. I love it.
Yep. And then, so we get an error.
Yeah.
Or get a warning.
But run it for you, just so people know
first.
what it looks like. So what that error said was, hey, you don't have that font installed. And it's going to look like, I think that's probably like Tahoma or Verdana, you know, one of the web core fonts. It's not the experience we wanted. I mean,
Silverlight only allows you to use the fonts that are available basically on all platforms.
Yep.
Unless you include it with your project.
So go ahead and do it. So little box called embed right there.
Right there.
And just run it. What's the difference here?
Quite a bit better.
Well, there it is. Yeah, well, I'll be. Now, of course, you can get into trouble. So what if this wasn't just a static piece of text?
Yep.
What if it was like a data source or something I could type into? What would happen?
Well, let me just data bind this really quick. So I already have a data source set up, so I can quickly data bind to it. So I'll just go to the greeting. Howdy, folks. Let's actually run this.
Yeah.
And see what goes on. And
oh my God, what's that?
That looks a little
so we got
there.
It said hello, Doug. There's the O and the D and the hey yeah. So this problem. There's a really easy way to fix it though, isn't there?
There is. Yep. You can just go to dynamic. Change this from static. So static says take all the glyphs that are being used. Dynamic, I say this thing's going to be changing, so use a bunch of the glyphs.
So what was actually happening the first time, it was taking just the glyphs that you used, building its own basic sort of subsetted font and embedding that in the payload of the Silverlight application. This, of course, now embeds the whole thing. Now, that might be a bit bigger than you want, so you can actually, there's another little magic setting here. In fact, there's a whole little thing called Font Manager.
Just go into the Font Manager here. I actually say, I think we only need uppercase and lowercase, so I'm going to get rid of numbers and punctuation. Let's see how that looks.
Before you do that, can we look at the size just so you can see that it actually changes? That's kind of scary. Maybe it doesn't work. Find out.
Sometimes it doesn't make, the best way I like to look at this one in the object debug fonts. That's the zip size. Sometimes you won't see too much of a difference here, but that's 34K. So I think I went to the font manager. There's two ways of getting to it. Right here, so I just did uppercase and lowercase. Let's build it. See if it actually made a difference in here. Fonts, 13K.
Look at that.
Nice.
You saved 2 seconds for somebody.
20K, yep, of size.
But let's run it. One thing you'll notice, those people who are observant will notice the exclamation point is not in the right font. So there you go.
I got rid of the punctuation. So you see the text is actually right, but not the punctuation.
So we're running a little low on time, and we could probably do this for hours. And if you want us to, I should talk to somebody here and say we need more Blend sessions. But before we do this, there's one quick thing. Can you show? There's a tool that we use often in testing. It's a really, really cool tool that Peter actually wrote called Snoop.
Yeah.
Just take a look at this for a second.
But there's other, there's also, what is it, Mole for WPF, and there's also Silverlight Spy. So
neither of them are as good as this.
Neither are as good as this.
And how did somebody get this?
It's off of lois.us/Snoop, or if you look for WPF Snoop, just a really useful utility for actually debugging WPF applications.
So what does it do? What is it actually attempting to do here?
It attaches to running WPF applications. So basically, I just had selected my Blend application. So this is sort of nifty because this is Blend like released RTM, the Blend that you can install. Yeah, and that you can actually run Snoop, and you can be like, how is Blend made? How is it put together? So you can run this on it. And it just looks at the application, and it will just tear it apart. So if I wanted to go into something really simple, let's see. So sort of made better for multi-monitor
Certainly
setups.
something larger than 1024 by 768, but oh well.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm just going to Control-Shift, mouse over like the gradient editor. Pretty nifty one. Like, how did we actually make that? So I'll turn on the sort of like preview here, and you'll see that the entire thing is made up of, let's see. So the background goes from dark to light, and then actually overlaid on top of that, we have a horizontal gradient going from white to red.
And you can actually see, if you move up, the layered containers that it's built in. In fact, there's this really interesting 3D view. You can actually see basically how the whole thing is stacked together. It's a really cool, interesting thing.
Yeah, the level of composition that we actually use to make the Blend application. So let's see. I'm just going to go up pretty high up in the app, and then let's just magnify it. So one of the fun things about being WPF is that you can actually like zoom in. Let me make that big. So you can zoom in like really close, and you can see how our icons are made because these are vector icons up here. But yeah, how the entire application was put together, I'll just go to a 3D view. And this is like the exploded view.
And that's actually the way things are laid out in Z order. You can see how complicated this property pane is, for example.
Right.
It's pretty fascinating.
Yep.
Now, I think with that, we're going to open this up for questions. Does anybody have any questions at all for us? Could you come to the microphone? Sorry to make you do that, but we've been encouraged to do this. That way everybody can hear your question.
Any chance you'll make the project Blend available?
It's not a silly question. I mean, we've actually thought about it.
Everybody's asking.
Yeah, no, we've actually thought about it. Interesting thought.
What happened to 2.5 versus SP1?
Well, what we decided to do was instead of making people buy support for Silverlight, we decided to give it to you for free. And so we gave it as a service pack instead. Now, obviously, we're working on new things, and since we've already told you we're going to ship yearly, just wait. We're doing some really cool new things. So, can you get to the microphone? Can I make you do that? Thanks.
Any chance of a property grid?
Hang on one second. Sorry.
For Silverlight applications, I've seen usually the XAML it writes behind.
Yep.
It's a long one. You have a short XAML also. So is there any plan like Blend would do that? The shortcuts,
So explain that again.
The XAML which Blend writes for Silverlight application.
Yeah.
It's the complete XAML. You have other option of writing shortcuts which saves the bandwidth which would.
Oh, just compressing it?
Just
that's something that we work on constantly. So we're trying to improve that, trying to make it as small as possible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's an ongoing effort.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, any chance of a property grid control?
Extensible property grid shipped outside of Blend.
Yeah.
That's actually, we've had a lot of requests for that, and that's, I'm going to say that it's a lot more complex than you'd think because our whole undo, redo system is actually tied into our property grid right now. So,
but it's definitely a good idea, and
Yep.
we're contemplating it.
Yeah.
Sir.
You mentioned expression coder. Is that being released soon, or?
So Expression Encoder is actually part of the Expression Studio, and if you buy the Studio, you'll get that. You can also buy it individually.
So it is out now.
Expression Encoder, and do you know what it does? I mean,
Is it for the code behind so that it's? So
no,
it
it's
works for-
encoder. It actually
encoder. I see,
encodes
for the media.
Silverlight
Gotcha.
media video
Right, okay.
and many other
I
things.
gotcha.
And Service Pack 1 of that is being released very shortly. 1 week, in 1 week.
Perfect.
Yep.
Sir?
Could we please get solution folder support in Blend?
Noted.
For those of us with really large projects, like obviously
Like
Blend is.
Expression Blend, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So is that,
Solution folders?
yeah. Okay.
We're aware of that
Someday.
request.
We're aware of it. Another question back there?
Yeah, the XAML editing support inside of Blend seems to be lagging behind the XAML editing support in Visual Studio. For example, IntelliSense and just general editing features. Is that something you guys plan to address, or do you expect people to actually use Visual Studio for that?
We are expecting to address it in a very interesting way in our next version. I guess I can say that, can I? Okay.
All right, with the designer and developer workflow in mind, when can we look for source control support in Blend?
Oh,
itself?
that's a great thing. We've actually already announced that we're supporting that in our next version as well. So,
Yep.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
It seems to me that those people that have bought Expression Studio 1, that the upgrade price is pretty steep. It's like we took a chance on that.
Yeah.
And that's brand new technology. And that first upgrade price, I just wouldn't have expected it to be that much money.
So, yeah, I don't know what to say about that. It's a good point, and I just don't know the details on that enough. Not to ignore you. We should talk afterwards, perhaps. Yes, sir.
You can't design without data. I'm sure you've heard it. So
Oh,
what
yeah.
are you guys doing with data and templates and resource dictionaries, which this fails to render if they're composite and stuff?
Yeah, so I actually didn't dive into that too much, but for that Twitter application, I was using design time data for that. That's actually one of the things that made it very designable there.
You can imagine that we're very sensitive to that need, and that if we were doing more versions of Expression Blend, that we'd be addressing that. And that's probably all I can really say for you, but I guarantee you we're doing something for you.
Yeah, it's just making applications more designable and making it easier to do it. That's a very big goal of ours.
One of the things that's interesting, this is a big application, and we're actually doing amazing changes every year to this thing, and I tell the team basically engage, compete, win, and the first two versions have been engage releases. This next version is going to be a big one, so stay tuned.
Yep.
I missed
Yeah,
one.
well, I could, yeah. It's going to happen next year. Yep, guaranteed. Yeah.
So I've been working with several third-party controls, and they, at least it seems that they're somewhat opaque in Blend.
Yeah.
And when I go and talk to them, what they're saying is that there are certain points within Blend that they can't get into. Is that accurate, or?
It is. We're talking to them to see what we can do.
Okay, so I
We
think what
are
they're looking
going to
for
be
is
a much better citizen in the world of extensibility. in the
okay.
next
So
version.
wizard and design support and that kind of thing that they can add in. Is that?
Don't know
Not sure we're going that far,
the
but-
exact details. We're
Okay.
working with
We're
control
working
vendors,
through it.
though.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
Code hinting? Code hinting?
Code hinting, yes. IntelliSense, I think somebody asked that.
Yeah. It's
Earlier.
actually. Wouldn't that be cool?
we hear you on that one.
Yeah, we hear you, and you watch this space. I guess as I can say with that.
Yeah.
So I have a question about design. You have sort of limited AI file support and nothing for EPS.
For EPS, yes. Let's see here. EPS would be a very likely thing to have happen this next version, perhaps. Better Illustrator support, probably not going to improve that anytime soon. So, to be honest.
Were there specific features, actually?
Yeah, I was going to say, what specifically are you looking for, sir?
Okay.
Wait.
Oh, you talking to me?
Talking to the fellow who helped us. What specific thing are you looking for better support with?
We have a bunch of people who give us logos and stuff as EPSs.
Yes.
Would be nice to be able to play with them in design.
Yeah.
That's number one. And then, of
so
course...
So now you have to open them up as an Illustrator file, save it as an Illustrator file, and then open it up in design.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's a bit of a pain.
Yep. I understand that part. Cool.
So building on the question earlier about third-party companies designing controls and having those controls render and play well in Blend, are there any best practices for doing that?
For rendering, there's design time data is very useful, but then there's the design time sizing. I don't know if you've seen that, just getting them to expand right. Basically, if you look at our blog, we put pretty much all of the things that we use for actually inside of Blend up on that. So a lot of our developers will actually post the blog entries for that. I don't know if there's specific problems that you're running into where they aren't running, because there's a pretty wide array of things that will be problematic or that you can do to actually help. Yeah. Look at our blog. I'd say that's probably the best thing to do. Yep.
64-bit support for Snoop?
Yeah. I keep on getting like requested for that. The source code is out there. I just had some trouble on the managed injector compiling it for. I'm no longer the C# whiz or C++ whiz that I was.
Yeah, I couldn't get it to compile either.
To okay, I'll. Yeah. That was like last week, or they asked me for the code and I said go use it. I just want 64-bit back. That was actually that was my condition. So that's awesome they did that, and now I'll just pull it back in. So cool.
Next, last question, I guess.
The Visual State Manager for WPF, and I didn't quite catch. How do we turn that on? What's the deployment story?
There will be on our blog, and there will definitely be on the download page for Visual State Manager for the WPF toolkit. There will be instructions on how to do it. It's just a registry key. We had to add that because we released the tooling before they actually released the WPF toolkit. So we wanted to make sure that that Blend wouldn't fall over.
So is that on Codeplex, or where do we?
That is on Codeplex. Yes.
Any other questions we're going to have to take after this? In fact, we're going to be in the
lounge.
In the big room, I guess they call that. Yep. Afterwards, and if you can also come up and ask us. Thank you, everybody.